Now I will start my talk on making a will. What's the importance of making a will? It's to make sure that when you are no longer around, your assets go to people whom you love and they do not go to people you do not like. For example, if you have 3 sons, you do not want to give anything to your second son who's a scoundrel. However, if you do not have a will, as a child, he will have a share under the law of intestacy. In your will, you state in no uncertain terms how your assets are to be distributed. You can also state how grand you wish to make your departure from this earth, or how simple. Now, what's a will? Actually, I think you all are very familiar, but legally, it's actually a document in a form prescribed by law as to how your property is to be distributed when you die. Now, very important, it must be in writing. You cannot orally say, I want to give my property to my wife or whatever. And it must be signed by the person in the presence of 2 witnesses present at the same time. If that is not so, then the will could be invalid. Now, the testator is the person, testator and testatrix. Testator is male, testatrix is female. But they are the person who makes a will. Who can make a will? Anyone over 21 and of sound mind can make a will. Now, if you are mentally gone, you cannot make your will already, okay? So, but minors can make privileged wills if they are either soldiers, sailors, or members of the Air Force in active military service. You can imagine, if you are in a war and bullets are flying all around, you cannot ask somebody to come, hey, be my witness, I need 2 witnesses, okay? Now, what happens if there is no will? If there is no will, the laws of intestacy will apply. What does that say? No parents or children, the spouse inherits everything. If you have spouse and children, spouse gets half, children half in equal shares. That means 4 children, 1 child gets 1/4. 3 children, 1 child gets 1/3. No spouse. Children take the entire estate in equal shares. You have spouse and parents, but no children. Spouse takes half and parents half in equal shares. Some people have asked me, if you have no will, does the government take your property? No, it doesn't. Actually, it goes on, you can, the grandparents, the aunts and aunties and all that can inherit. But we are not going to deal with that now, okay? Executors. Now, when you need somebody to carry out your wishes under the will, okay? So they are the executors. What's their function? Apply to court for a grant of probate after death. They gather in your assets and then they pay your debts and distribute the balance of the assets to the beneficiaries. Now, if there is no will, then the next of kin can apply to court for letters of administration. Not more than 4 administrators. The spouse has a prior right to apply. Okay, she's the first person who's got the right to apply. If she doesn't apply, then it comes to the children. Children have equal right. So if you have 6 children, everyone has a right to apply. So there could be a fight. Okay, I want to apply, okay? But you have only not more than 4 administrators. So if 4 apply, the other 2 have to renounce. Okay, if no relatives, then creditors can also apply. CPF funds are distributed according to your nomination, regardless of what your will says. If there is no nomination, your funds are distributed according to your will, if any, or according to the laws of intestacy. Marriage revokes a nomination. So if you marry or remarry, remember to make a new nomination. Otherwise, your will will pakai already. Insurance policies. If the beneficiaries in your insurance policies are your wife and children, they are entitled regardless of what you say in the will. This is the insurance trust policy under Section 73 of the Conveyancing and Law of Property Act. Now, if you want to make a will, you have to identify your executors, okay? Get their consent. And you make a list of all your assets, property, money, cars, and jewelry. You make a list of your debts, mortgages, loans, whatever. Make a list of the beneficiaries, clearly identify them. For example, it's no good saying my son. If you have 4 sons, which son? So say son number 2, what's his name? Okay, who is to receive what? Okay, my son is to maybe my eldest son to receive my Rolex watch. My wife to receive my money in my DBS account. Okay, so you'll be specific. Insert residuary clause. Otherwise, property not disposed of will come under intestacy. Now, what that means is, now you make your will, okay? You have only 1 house. Later, you buy 2 more houses, but it's not reflected in your will. So, if it's not reflected in your will, it will go under intestacy. But if you have a residuary clause, you will say, you know, in your residue, I give the residue to my wife half share, my children half share, then it's covered. Okay, you have to get 2 witnesses to witness your signature to the will. They must be present at the same time. Your witnesses can be executors, but not beneficiaries or spouses of beneficiaries, because otherwise your will could be invalid. Now, there are 2 types of property, immovable and movable. Immovable, as the name implies, you cannot move land or houses, right? So that's immovable. There are 2 types of tenancy, okay? Joint tenancy. Property held in joint tenancy cannot be willed because there's a right of survivorship. Joint tenancy can be severed so that each party holds 1 share. For example, there are 4 joint tenants. 1 passes on. The property will be held by 3 joint tenants. 2 joint tenants, the survivor takes the whole property. Tenancy in common. Each owner owns a specific share, 50-50, 70-30. Once I gave a talk on a Saturday, and I mentioned this about joint tenancy, that, so I gave the talk on Saturday. On Monday, this woman came. I don't want my husband to inherit my property. I want to sever the property. But I think almost all our HDB properties are held in joint tenancy. Actually, my friend, Mrs. Santan, she said she was the one who suggested that, because if there's no dispute or anything, if one spouse dies, or let's say husband dies, the wife can go to the housing board and have the the property transferred to her just by lodging the notice of death. But sometimes I've come across cases where they ask for a grant before they let the beneficiaries deal with the house. Okay. Now, I find this one very important. You make a provision in the will. If you give your house to your children, for example, okay, your children can drive your spouse out, you know. So to give protection to your spouse, make provision to allow your spouse to live in the house rent-free for the rest of his or her life, and property cannot be sold without his or her consent. Movable property. Now, something that moves, money can move, shares can move, right? I mean, meaning it can be transferred to somebody else. Jewelry, car, insurance. Do you think of someone? I think that's all I have for wills. Because of the shortness of time, I'll have to conclude that. But I'll take questions and answers.